Okay, let's talk about stress. You know that feeling, right? For a lot of us, it feels like this enemy we're supposed to defeat. But what if we could reframe it? In this explainer, we're going to transform stress from a source of anxiety into a signal and build you a practical toolkit to help you actually thrive when the pressure is really on. Does this sound familiar? I mean, it's such a common feeling when you're staring down a huge workload, whether it's for an exam or a massive project. That feeling of being totally overwhelmed, well, it's a universal starting point for stress, and it's exactly what we're here to tackle today. And this pressure doesn't just come from our to-do lists. A study of students preparing for big competitive exams found that a staggering 93% feel pressure to fulfill what their parents expect of them. So if you feel this way, believe me, you are so far from alone. This is a massive shared experience. So here's our game plan. We'll start by digging into the common pressures we all face. Then we'll get a little nerdy and look at the science of what stress is actually doing to your brain. From there, it's all about solutions. We'll hack your mindset, build a practical toolkit, and then wrap it all up with how to build success that actually lasts. First things first, let's just take a moment to validate what you're feeling. That sense of being overwhelmed is absolutely real, and it comes from some very specific places. Now, what's really fascinating here is how much of this pressure is internal. I mean, yeah, there's the 93% feeling parental pressure, but look at the rest. 91% of students stress about how to improve their own performance, and 83% are beating themselves up, determined to score better after just one bad exam. This isn't just outside pressure, it's a cycle we often create for ourselves. To really get a handle on stress, we have to understand it. So let's look at the biology. What is actually going on inside your head when you feel that pressure building up? All right, the key player here is something called your working memory. The best way to think of it is like your brain's RAM, or maybe it's mental scratch pad. It's the part you use for problem solving, for learning new things, for reasoning. It is absolutely critical for high-level thinking, and it's also the system that's most vulnerable to stress. So when you get stressed, your body releases a hormone called cortisol. You can think of it as your body's built-in alarm system. Now, it's super important for short bursts, that whole fight or flight response. The problem is when that alarm is just constantly blaring, all that cortisol starts to cause some real issues. So here it is, the big takeaway from the science bit. High stress leads to high cortisol, and that directly messes with your working memory. In other words, the very tool your brain needs to do its best work is the first thing that stress attacks. Kind of ironic, right? Okay, so that's the problem. Stress messes with our brain's hardware. But the good news? We can totally change our response, and it all starts with our mindset. Let's dig into how we can build a real foundation of resilience. This concept from psychologist Carol Dweck is a complete game changer. With a fixed mindset, you basically believe your intelligence is what it is, it's static. So failure feels like a final verdict on your ability. But with a growth mindset, challenges are actually opportunities to grow. Failure isn't some dead end, it's just valuable data. Which side of this chart do you find yourself on more often? Now, getting a growth mindset isn't just about wishing for it. It's about actively rewiring your thought patterns. And one of the most effective ways to do that is with a technique called cognitive restructuring. It's basically a way to challenge and change those thoughts that produce all that stress. Let's walk through this. It's super practical. So, the situation, you get a bunch of critical feedback. The automatic negative thought is just catastrophic, right? I'm a failure. But then you stop and you examine the evidence. Is that thought actually true? Well, no. The feedback is there to help, and that lets you form a new, more balanced thought. This feedback is a tool for my success. See what happened? You just restructured that thought from a threat into an opportunity. Okay, so mindset is the foundation. Now, let's build on top of that with some real practical tools you can start using today. These will help you manage your focus, your time, and your body's response to pressure. First up, the Pomodoro technique. Remember that limited working memory we talked about? Well, this technique protects it. By focusing intensely for just 25 minutes, you stop yourself from getting cognitively overloaded. And those scheduled breaks? They're not just for relaxing. They're for clearing out that mental workspace so you can come back sharp and ready for the next sprint. Next, let's talk about learning and memory. Instead of cramming everything in at the last minute, try spaced repetition.
This is all based on the science of the forgetting curve. It works because it respects how your brain moves information from that fragile working memory into long-term storage. You're not overloading the system, you're just reinforcing the pathways over time, which makes recalling that info almost effortless when you need it most.
So those tools are great for planning, but what about when you feel that wave of anxiety in the moment? You know, when your heart is racing right before a presentation or an exam. What do you do then? Here is your emergency brake, the 4-7-8 breathing technique. This is a simple physiological hack. That long exhale at the end sends a powerful signal to your brain that it's time to chill out, and it activates your body's rest and digest mode. Honestly, it's one of the fastest ways to tell your body, hey, we're safe, and just dial down that stress response immediately.
So, as you can see, the goal here isn't just to survive stressful moments. It's about using these tools to build a real system for long-term resilience and achievement that you can actually sustain.
All right, let's just quickly recap the key takeaways. Feeling stressed is a totally normal part of trying to do great things. We know that stress has a real biological effect on your working memory. But, and this is the important part, you are not powerless. By shifting to a growth mindset and using practical tools, you can take back control. And maybe most importantly, remember that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a critical part of the journey.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This is the growth mindset in its purest form. Every single failure wasn't a final verdict. It was a data point. It was learning. Just imagine approaching your own challenges with that same exact perspective. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. Stop thinking of stress as the enemy. Start thinking of it as a signal. It might be telling you to take a break, or maybe to rethink your strategy, or maybe just to take a deep breath. The real question is, are you listening? And what is it telling you to do next?